Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
أفاد مراسل العالم أن 3 أشخاص قتلوا وأصيب
3 people were killed and 17 others wounded in an attack that targeted 3 Coptic churches in Alexandria in northern Egypt. Local city police said that 3 people holding knives stormed the churches all at the same time and proceeded to stab worshippers. The incident immediately prompted demonstrations by Coptic Christians in protest, considering it an attempt to ignite sectarian strife between Egyptians. Our correspondent Ahmed Al-Sayoufi joins us from Cairo. Ahmed, there are conflicting reports about the number of victims in the church attacks. What is the official and final count?
Yes. So far, we have received information that simultaneous attacks on 3 churches happened at 8:20 this morning. The attacks wounded 17 Christian citizens and killed 1, although information from the Coptic sources indicate that the number of killed is 3. However, until now, the number of killed has not been confirmed. What we know for certain is that at least 1 person was killed in the attacks, but the information remains conflicting. Also, Coptic Christians are staging demonstrations and sit-ins at churches in protest of these very unfortunate incidents.
Ahmed, what do we know about the identity of the assailants?
One of the assailants was arrested and is now being questioned at Alexandria police station. The Egyptian police announced that the man was mentally ill, but of course no one can confirm this so far.
All right, Ahmed, let's talk about the initial reactions and what's been done to contain the incident and prevent future ones.
Yes, both government and national leaders in Alexandria, including church officials, met to discuss the incidents. Also, the Parliament Committee of the Muslim Brotherhood in Alexandria condemned the attacks and urged everyone to exercise restraint to prevent an escalation. These are some of the reactions so far.
Ahmed Al-Sayoufi, our correspondent in Cairo, thanks very much.
Iraqis hope that their political leaders will be able to overcome their differences and quickly form the new government in order to deal with the problems that plague the country.
Iraqis are concerned about how the political developments that followed the American occupation in Iraq will affect their national identity. Political negotiations between various parties on how to form a new government have been deadlocked for a very long time. The Iraqi public, which has increasingly been expressing dissatisfaction about the security and economic crisis, demanded that politicians put differences aside and reach a quick resolution.
The political parties must respect the Iraqi citizens who elected the politicians. They must respect Iraqi citizens. Why else did we go to the voting booths?
Some political parties support the right of the Sunni Arabs to have an Arab prime minister. The Iraqi public sees this as a right that must be upheld.
The majority of the Iraqi population is Arab. The Kurds have a federation in the north and they elect their own officials and ministers. Are there any Arab ministers in the Kurdish government? No. This is my view, which also reflects the view of the Iraqi public. We are an Arab country that must have an Arab prime minister. We are an Arab country and a member of the Arab League.
Iraqi citizens are not concerned about the negotiations between political committees over political differences and nominees. What they care about is having a national unity government that can help them get out of the current conditions. Political and security developments have a direct effect on the Iraqi public. They are demanding their leaders to speed up the formation of the government, which they view as one of their basic rights and a solution to the crisis.
Chadian President Idriss Déby confirmed that the capital of N'Djamena is under control after his government's forces managed to foil an attack that was launched by the rebel forces of the United Front for Change. The Chadian Minister of Information accused the Sudanese government of supporting the rebels in an attempt to undermine Déby's regime. However, Khartoum confirmed that it did not give any aid to the United Front for Change. It also confirmed that it is still committed to the Tripoli Agreement, which it signed on February 8th.
In a very dangerous turn of events in Chad, battles have erupted between rebel forces and the government and have moved from the border region to the capital, N'Djamena. These rebels belong to the United Front for Change, which has been trying to topple the Chadian President Idriss Déby, who came into power through a military coup against President Hussein Hebri 15 years ago. What helped Déby's opposition to achieve some political gains and enforce their control on large areas is the fact that most leaders of the United Front for Change, the largest rebel movement in Chad, have military background.
We found a lot of weapons which used to belong to the Chadian National Army. You know, most of our generals had defected from the army of Idriss Déby. They had joined us with their weapons and equipment. We also have our own weapons.
The spokesman for the United Front for Change accused the French government of supporting Déby's regime. He pointed to those French Mirage planes which attacked rebel locations in the area of Idri near the Sudanese borders, killing and injuring a number of civilians. However, Paris confirmed that their planes opened fire only as a warning message to the rebels that were heading toward N'Djamena, which has been in a state of tension. This is probably the most difficult time facing Idriss Déby. Previously, rebel leaders tried to provide justifications for why they should take power.
We must end the state of chaos. We need a stable regime that represents all the Chadian people and segments of the population. The country will be run in a good way and the people will live in stability. This is all what we need.
What is happening in Chad cannot be separated from what is ongoing in Darfur in Western Sudan for tribal reasons. From early on, President Déby accused Khartoum of supporting the rebels. The Justice and Equality Movement, the largest rebel movement in Darfur, supports this accusation. One of its leaders confirmed that the attack that was launched by the Chadian rebels to topple Déby was actually planned in Khartoum. The Sudanese government denied these accusations. The Sudanese Foreign Minister, Lam Akul, explained that his country is committed to the agreement that was reached in the Tripoli summit on the 8th of February, in which Khartoum agreed not to give any Chadian rebels a safe refuge on its territories. Lam Akul said that what is happening in Chad is caused by internal factors. The unfolding events in Chad compelled the Peace and Security Council of the African Union to call for an urgent meeting to take proper measures in order to prevent another coup from happening, something Africa has been suffering from for the last 4 decades.
His Honorable Ayatollah Sheikh Hashemi Rafsanjani, the President of the Iranian Expediency Council, visited the Binyas Company, the General Power Plant Company in Binyas, and the Iranian Agharab Company. The visit to the Syrian province of Tartus by Sheikh Ayatollah Hashemi Rafsanjani, the chair of the Iranian Expediency Council, came in the framework of bilateral cooperation between Syria and Iran concerning oil and gas, which has been ongoing for many years. His first stop was the public refinery company in Binyas. After that, he and his delegation toured parts of the company refineries in Binyas, then a public power plant company and the Iranian Agharab Company. He heard detailed explanations by officials about the work and the electric power plants. At the end of his tour, the Honorable Rafsanjani said that the goal of his visit is to survey the production centers and the oil, electric, and gas installations there.
The goal of my visit was to survey the site in this area by land and by air. We toured the production centers as well as the oil, gas, and electricity installations. One of the aims of our visit to these production facilities was to look at the site where Iranian companies are working and cooperating with our Syrian brothers. There are two projects that Iran is implementing in Syria. I also met with officials of Syrian companies, and they are pleased with how the Iranian companies are working. We are waiting to complete oil and gas pipelines from the Islamic Republic of Iran through Iraqi land into Syria, reaching refineries in Latakia and Benias. However, there continues to be essential cooperation between Iran and Syria in this regard.
The goal of this visit was to survey the economic Syrian refineries. But this refinery and the Adil refinery are unique because an Iranian company has contributed in implementing some of the work. It built a system that could treat 150 tons per hour in the Benias refinery. The system, which was completed in 2005, worked successfully. This is considered a model of economic cooperation between Iranian and Syrian companies, which was used as a platform to embark on other projects, such as in Homs, in addition to other stations in Benias.
Ten years have passed since the Nabdiya massacre. The massacre that claimed the lives of 7 people, including a 4-day-old infant, is still imprinted in the minds of Hassan al-Abid, the father, and everyone who witnessed the Israeli savagery that day. A question that comes to mind regarding these massacres is, what will stop Israel's evil doing if the Lebanese resistance is disarmed after being a symbol of Lebanon's strength and resilience?
10 years have not been able to erase the image of a small 4-day-old girl whose body was torn to pieces by an Israeli missile that hit her home in Nabdiya. Her house was turned into a mass grave for the family of Al-Abad when they took refuge there, thinking it would protect them from Israel's aggression, which had reached a level of madness.
There is a deep wound here. It's very difficult. After many years, people say wounds heal. It's been 10 years, you know, and it has been the opposite.
One family member, Ibrahim, survived. On the anniversary of the massacre, he recalls the horrific atrocities he witnessed that morning.
My mother was nursing my little infant sister, Noor. The scenes cannot escape my mind. Every day, I remember them. I feel just like it happened yesterday.
It was a view that sent chills down your spine. Very young children. This is the Israeli savagery that we've grown accustomed to, unfortunately.
I lost all 7 of my brothers and sisters. I also lost my mother and even my own childhood.
The mother and her child, Lulu, Huda, Neda, Noor, Muhammad, Murtada, and Ali, all are victims that the enemy wanted to deprive of a basic means to defend themselves. So how do we defend ourselves against the evil of this oppressor that has always kept its weapons pointed towards Lebanon?
If the resistance is disarmed, who's going to defend us? At the time, we had resistance, missiles, and dozens of our young men martyred, but we still weren't able to drive Israel out. Israel did whatever it wanted with us: kill, maim, destroy houses, and burn cars. What would Israel do to us then?
I believe if the resistance is stopped, then no one in the world will be able to protect us from Israel.
Even after 10 years, the massacre is vividly remembered whenever Israel carries out another massacre, attack, or a security breach. Who will deter this aggressive monster if Lebanon loses its only means of defending itself?
Security forces remain on high alert throughout the country today to protect Israelis during this holiday week amid continuing warnings of potential Palestinian terror attacks. A closure on the West Bank and Gaza remains in effect. Meanwhile, Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh has reacted defiantly to the Israeli crackdown on Palestinian rocket attacks. Dennis Zinn reports.
Inside Israel, the ongoing high alert continues with the police force fully deployed throughout the country. The warning count issued by military intelligence is still peaking at over 70, with about a dozen classified as specific. Overnight, two Qassam rockets launched from the northern Gaza Strip towards the Negev never made it past the border fence and exploded inside the Palestinian territory. Nevertheless, IDF gunners responded with sporadic artillery barrages at the launch sites. Security sources today pointed out that the fact that the two rockets fell short shows that the Qassam manufacturers and the launch teams are under stress, and the ongoing IDF campaign against the terror groups is bearing results. Yesterday, an IDF engineering unit entered Gaza for the first time since the disengagement to search for explosives near the border fence. The incursion was made close to the Kisufim junction at the spot where the two armed terrorists were shot dead last night. The officer commanding the operation said that the Palestinians are constantly trying to plant charges in that area to target IDF vehicles patrolling the border. Since the pullout last August, he said, Israeli forces have killed over 100 terrorists, 30 of them at the border fence. Despite the violence, as a humanitarian gesture, Israel today opened all the crossings into Gaza to facilitate the transfer of food to the cash-strapped Gaza Strip. Most of the trucks were loaded with wheat and flour, donated by the United Nations. Meanwhile, at a rally in Gaza City after midday prayers today, Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh said the suspension of Western aid will not bring down the Hamas-led government. Addressing hundreds of supporters, he said, the Palestinian people will not give up and are prepared to live on salt and olives. He did not announce the fact that PA Foreign Minister Mahmoud al-Zahar this morning set out on a fundraising tour of Arab nations to try and alleviate the financial crisis and the growing chaos in the Palestinian areas. Al-Zahar's two-week trip will include stops in Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and Kuwait. In the West Bank this morning, a huge rally attended by thousands took place in Nablus in support of the Hamas-led government. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
And moving to political developments here at home, do the recent elections in Israel reflect voters' increasing disenchantment with Israeli-Palestinian relations? That's the question IBA's Dan Diker put to the participants in this week's Frontline. Palestinian human rights expert Bas Hamid and managing editor of the Jerusalem Post, David Horowitz, reflect on that and other burning issues as Kadima continues its efforts at forming a governing coalition.
Mr. Horowitz, one of the curious aspects of this coalition that's being stitched together these weeks is that there's really no coalescing idea about diplomacy between Palestinians and Israelis, probably for the first time in many, many years. How does that play into what has been described by you as somewhat of an odd process?
You're right. There's no central ideology if the coalition that we anticipate takes shape that unites all the factors. Olmert could have cobbled together his 60 of a centre-left coalition. He could have brought in Meretz as well as the pensioners and Labour, and he could have struggled through, and there would have been a unifying ideology there, or a unifying support for a further West Bank withdrawal.
Mr. Eid, here you have Mr. Horowitz reflecting on what the public is saying and what the body politic is saying. For the first time, it looks like most Israelis have thrown up their hands and say, these are the politics of frustration. There is no partner on the Palestinian side. How do you react to these political developments?
Yes, unfortunately, I think that in the past 5 years, the region already witnessed a so violent period, and that's, I believe, made the Israelis and the Palestinians so frustrated from their own politics. And probably this is the change that the both societies, the Palestinians and the Israelis, also succeed to bring out. Look to Kadima, how Kadima is going to create the coming government in Israel. Look to Hamas, how the Palestinians decided to revenge from the Fatah and to bring Hamas out. It probably, and I think that so many Palestinians are so optimistic on the future that maybe Kadima and Hamas will be the real leaders to bring out a kind of a real solution that we, the Palestinians and the Israelis, already suffered for tens of years in the past.
Mr. Horowitz, do you see Kadima and Hamas somehow coming to an agreement and creating hope for both peoples?
Absolutely not, and I don't think there's any optimism whatsoever on the Israeli side. I think that in Israel there is the sense that Hamas cannot possibly genuinely moderate because of its sense of what Islam requires of its adherents. The Hamas interpretation of Islam being that there can be no legitimacy for a Jewish state. And I think the Israeli sense of no one to talk to on the other side is incredibly widely held. And really in this election, people had a choice between unilaterally pulling out of territory or holding firm. But the notion of negotiation, advocated really only by the, if you like, the traditional left in Israel, it did very badly. I mean, even Meretz wasn't even sure that it was really advocating that. Maybe one last try at negotiation, and even they didn't do terribly well. So I think there's a lot of despair on the Israeli side.
Mr. Eid, here you have the Palestinian people having tasted and standing for democracy more than really any other people in the Arab world, perhaps even more than Iraqis these days after Saddam. And yet the public chose a Hamas whose ideology rejects, in a way, the democratic freedoms that you yourself as a human rights leader stand for. Give us a sense of why the Palestinians voted in Hamas and what that means going forward in view of the desperation that Mr. Horowitz is talking about on the Israeli side.
See, I don't think that the Palestinians, why they voted Hamas, already supporting the ideology of Hamas or supporting the Islamization of Hamas. I don't believe that there is Palestinians who are really very interested in any Islamic state, let's say. And I think that it was only a kind of revenge. And I believe that the Palestinian people will stand very strongly facing any Hamas Islamization within the Palestinian society in the coming period. And in my opinion, and I am so optimistic, that Hamas is going to reflect a kind of the moderate Islam. I will never believe that Hamas is going to establish any kind of Iranian, let's say, regime or Hezbollah regime in the occupied territories. And I think that the Palestinian civil society right now opening its eyes towards any process which Hamas will take towards the Islamization of the society.
The Doctors of the World Organization condemned the United States and the European Union's decision to suspend aid to the Palestinian Authority, saying that the victims are civilians. Our correspondent, Ahmed Anwar, in the Palestinian-occupied territories followed the effects of the growing economic crisis in this report.
The quiet and tension permeating the atmosphere in the Gaza Strip is due to the deteriorating economic conditions and the Israeli Western blockade. Markets, which are normally filled with the hustle and bustle of economic activity, seemed completely devoid of any basic goods to sell.
The delay in paying the employees' salaries and the continuous Israeli blockade of the main crossings through Gaza are having a real negative impact on the Palestinian market.
The conditions are dire in every home. Children have been especially affected by the European Union's decision to freeze €250,000 in annual aid to the Palestinian Authority.
There is a crisis in every situation. The food supplies, for example. I tried buying yogurt today but couldn't find any at any of the stores.
The Israeli closure of the Mintar crossing for more than 40 days pushed neighboring countries, namely Egypt and Jordan, to move quickly. But the people concentrated mainly on obtaining as much bread as possible to store in anticipation of a possible Israeli incursion into the territories. Several shops have also closed down due to debts and financial losses incurred. Meanwhile, medicine at pharmacies has been left unused and is about to expire.
We did not contribute to the financial situation that the Palestinian Authority is facing at the moment. We were simply handed over this disastrous situation from the Palestinian Authority and previous governments, which has burdened our people with over $4 billion in debt. The disaster is the legacy of our predecessors.
This massive debt left the Palestinian treasury bankrupt and unable to pay the salaries of 140,000 employees. Meanwhile, Israel suspended $60 million in tax revenues due to the Palestinian Authority to isolate the Hamas government.
We have enough for the next 10 days in food supplies. The situation is really dire, but we are continuing our mission.
At the same time, much is left unsaid about the shortage in fuel needed for transport goods. Today, Palestinians see a bleak future ahead of them. They don't believe tomorrow will be any better than their present reality. In their own words, they are paying the price for choosing Hamas to represent them.
Arabic calligraphy and its highly creative artists are at the heart of the Islamic fine arts. Muhammad Sharifi is one such artist from Algeria. He is world-renowned for his expert knowledge and mastery of the art of calligraphy. We put together this report.
Priceless treasures and spectacular outlines embody the creative work of an Algerian calligraphist whose name is instantly connected with authentic Arabic calligraphy. Muhammad Sharifi's mastery of Arabic calligraphy enabled him to ascend to high levels of expertise that garnered him local and international accolades and honors, testifying to his ingenuity.
I was coached by some of the greats in calligraphy, Sayyid Ibrahim of Egypt, as well as Hamid Al-Amdi of Istanbul. After that, I worked at the Higher Institute of Fine Arts, teaching calligraphy, and have remained in the field ever since.
Sharifi was born in 1935 in the province of Ghadeya. There, he attended elementary and secondary schools, after which he headed to Cairo to earn his degree in calligraphy from the School of Arabic Calligraphy. For his doctoral dissertation, Sharifi's researched the history of Arabic calligraphy in the Middle East and beyond. He also frequently served on judging panels for calligraphy competitions. To date, he has 4 copies of the Quran to his credit.
Writing the words of the Quran is an ambition of every Arabic calligraphy artist. In fact, Arabic calligraphy developed because of the Quran. I wrote the first 2 copies of the Quran in the Warsh style, which entails a certain form of recitation. For the 3rd and 4th, I used the Hafs style.
A journey filled with creative accomplishments and an experience from which students of fine arts benefit. The joy of teaching for Muhammad Sharifi is matched by the students' own joy of learning. To help preserve the craft, Sharifi is working to establish more private schools for calligraphy and to introduce Arabic calligraphy in elementary schools to help develop a taste and a sense for the art early on.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. For a transcript of this program, to watch streaming video, or for instructions on how to receive Link TV in the United States, visit linktv.org.